Hello, I'm Eva Fierst, former education curator of the University Museum of Contemporary Art in Amherst. I have worked in the last 20 years in various capacities as a curator in North Adams, at Smith College, the Jewish Museum in Berlin, and I'm enjoying my time away from a 9-to-5 job. We are finding ourselves today at the Jewish Community Center in Amherst. The Jewish Community Center is a very vibrant community with lots of activities, and at the same time they also have some space for exhibitions of works of art. And today it brings us here to see the works of Richard Cohen, who is a member of the community here, and he has been painting for quite some time in his spare time when he's not a lawyer. So I have a few questions of Richard, and we'll just jump right in. Hi, Richard.
Hi, Eva.
How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you.
You have been painting for quite some time. Can you tell us how you got into painting? Because it seems to be a big jump from being a lawyer to being a painter. How did you come to make this connection?
I've been painting for about 20 years, and it was very fortuitous circumstances that drew me to painting, because I had been a photographer, actually black and white mostly, for probably the last 45 years, but I had no desire to paint, no inclination to paint at all. My daughter was taking art classes in Princeton, New Jersey, where we lived before we moved to Amherst, and we were in Maine, where we have a summer place, and one day she suggested out of the blue that we should go to the coast, bring some pastels, and just have some fun. And I had no expectations, I had no preconceptions about what this experience would be like, but it was amazing. It was like a light switch went off, and I loved it right from the beginning. I had no idea what I was doing, but I loved the experience of painting and trying to capture the beauty of the Maine coast. So that's really how I got started painting.
So you didn't have any formal training?
Not before that. I had no formal training. When I was about 10 years old, my mother, who was an artist, took me to art classes at the local Y, and I hated it. I hate being inside on a weekend. And I had no desire to continue painting at that point. I wanted to go out and play sports.
So let us now go to an image that was made in Maine, so we see what inspired Richard to painting. So Richard, here we have a scene of Maine that, at least to me, describes quintessential Maine. And you were sitting on the beach holding pastels and feeling like a duck into water. Tell us more about that moment.
It was a very exciting moment for me, because my daughter was sitting right next to me. She was also doing her own painting. I was doing a painting of the sea and some of the rocks. She was doing a painting just of the rocks. And I was asking her, how do you get this effect? How do you get reflection on the water? How do you capture the colors? And she was walking me through it. And she actually marked up the painting a little bit. She took her own pastels and was helping me out with a little demonstration. So that really helped me understand a little bit about the technicality of how you achieve a certain effect with the pastels. So it was very helpful from a technical standpoint, but more importantly, there was an excitement that was created about just the creative act. It was something that I had really not done, and it was just all new and unique and exciting. So I got tremendous motivation after that to continue the process and learn more about how you do pastels, what pastels really are, and what the possibilities are with that medium.
So let me ask you this question. What are pastels?
Pastels are, it looks like a piece of chalk. They're different colors, really hundreds, if not thousands of different colors that you can get in pastel. And what it is it's 95% pigment and a little bit of gum arabic or something else to just keep the pigment in place. So it's almost all pigment, and as a result, the colors are incredibly vibrant and crisp. And I love that part of pastels, especially soft pastels. There are some pastels that are soft. They come right off almost buttery when you touch the paper, and the paper has teeth. It has a little bit of, there's some friction between the pastel and the paper. You do not use a brush at all. You simply hold them in your hands. It's like an extension of your fingers. So to me, it's a very natural thing to be able to apply the pastel to the paper. There's no brush, there's no intermediary. It's a very direct way of creating art. This is another Arizona landscape, which was inspired by the colors. Even though it's desert, the colors are very, very vibrant. And this is not from a photograph, it's not even from memory. It's really imagination, sort of a dream landscape based on maybe a composite, subconscious composite of what I saw in Arizona. But there's a story behind this. There's a story behind almost every painting, one way or the other. But I was really struggling with this a bit. I liked it, I didn't love it. And I happened to notice it sitting at one point in my studio, and it was upside down. And when I saw it, a light went off. It was like, this is really nice. I like this upside down. So I had to tweak the original painting a little bit, but the area right here was sky. Now it's reflection. I tweaked the painting a little bit to make it work as a reflection, but it was a good example in my mind of how there are really no rules. You can work with what you have in different ways. You can cut and paste, you can crop, you can turn things upside down. There's an infinite number of ways in which you can manipulate an image, whether it's photographic or pastel for that matter.
So now we are moving from the meditative to the atmospheric. And here is one of my favorites in this exhibition, which is a really hard thing to find, to a really atmospheric image that conjures up fog and imagination, and there's almost a mirror image there. It's on some level very finely worked. On the other hand, it is also very soft and broad brush stroked, if I can even say this in a pastel. But it has all kinds of different components that arrest the eye. It actually manipulates you to investigate this in many different ways. Richard, what is that about?
This is one of my more unusual paintings, if I could be blunt, in the sense that it is from a photograph. I don't paint from photographs very often. And I was actually leaving a friend's house one evening, right at dusk, and this is what it looked like. This is on Emily Lane in Amherst. It just came together really easily and quickly, which is unusual. Generally, painting is a challenge. It's an enjoyable challenge, but it's a challenge in its work. But this one came very easily, and I love it. Unfortunately, or fortunately, it's sold, so I'll have to part with it. But it's been sold to a friend, so I get visitation rights, which is the positive side of it.
What's interesting to me is that in this image, it seems so well done in those 3 hours, and I think it is what just came to you, and it just like pours out of you. And I think sometimes these things happening, you are in this kind of a zone that some people describe that as pure bliss.
That's really an excellent way to describe it, and that's one of the reasons that I paint, to get into the zone. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't, but when you do, it's an amazing place to be. It feels wonderful. You feel a sense of integration and wholeness and joy and peace, and it's really one of the things that drives me to paint, this goal of getting to that place. And I can safely say that in painting this particular work, I was there.
The image on Emily Lane that we talked about earlier, that was so atmospheric, was basically a woodland scene. And here we have two images again. And Richard is using the woodland theme again. And I would just like to ask him a couple of questions, because here we have the subject matter, very similar. And you have trees in the foreground, you have a landscape that is in the background. But those are two completely different images. One of the differences is obviously the season. Richard, you have the use of your pastels is very interesting here, because you are having a range of techniques. One is more of a fall, winter landscape, and the other one is not.
Yeah, these are both local scenes. I do like to paint some of the scenes around Amherst and the Pioneer Valley generally. This one is Pelham, and the one here is Shutesbury. They are from memory, so they're certainly not intended to be precise replications of what I saw. But this one is spring scene where the colors are just coming out, the leaves are just coming out, the grasses are getting very interesting. The light, it was late in the day, really a little before dusk. The light was extremely interesting on the grasses. And that's really, for me, if you want to identify the part of the painting that just really excited me and interested me, it's the grasses here.
What I also like about this particular one is, yes, the grasses, but there's something going on in the trees. And the trees have this bright green, but there's also something almost halo-like that has a kind of a pinkish apricot color that seems to be like a halo. All the sunshine is captured in those leaves.
This is an unusual painting in a number of respects, one of which is the paper itself that I was using is a lot coarser. Generally, it's a very fine sandpaper. You can hardly feel the grit. This one was a paper that I had never used before, and it was a very coarse kind of sandpaper, so I couldn't really do fine lines with the trees, for example. It was much more of a halo kind of effect that you might say, a looser, more free-flowing effect than trying to do trees very finely.
Yes, and I think that was very successful, because there is this kind of a softness in the air, and the whole idea about spring and these baby leaves and all kinds of things. Whereas the image on the right is, and I think that goes with the season. There's a starkness about that. The branches are very highly defined, and there's a little bit of a chill in the air. You can see this in the sky in the way that it's almost like November. You can just feel you need to put this extra layer of clothes on.
Yes. I think one of the things that captures that temperature, as it were, is the purple in the background,
Yes.
and as well as the distance, obviously. But the trees in this are a lot more defined, a lot more precise. There isn't a lot of softness in this. There's a hardness to it, which maybe captures the season. I really enjoy painting trees without leaves, just bare trees. You can see the shape of the branches that are just very, very beautiful and flowing, and it's something that is unique to this time of year.
So this concludes our session with Richard Cohen. Please come and see the exhibition. It's open until the end of January 2020. So you have a little bit of time to enjoy it. There are so many more paintings of his in this exhibition. We only scratched the surface, and you can investigate it on your own. Thank you very much for watching Pictures at an Exhibition, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.